regime no longer presents a threat in the region and beyond.
Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman is breaking ranks with his fellow Democrats and can't understand their reasoning for opposition to the war on Iran.
Why can't we all rally around behind our military when someone that we all agreed would be an objective? Why can't we just arrive now? Hey, we can have small difference about that. Overall. I think this been. 50 of those leaders were eliminated in just one strike. I think most of the world really should celebrate what's just happened and look at the kind of people that now are condemning it. They're the far left and those kind of people. Now ask yourself, if you're defending and decrying and defending Iran, what's wrong with your values? Where are you at with these things? Pick a side. And if you want to pick Iran's side, that's truly bizarre.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee today about terrorism threats in this country.
We work with the FBI often, and Homeland Security Investigations specializes in this kind of work each and every day. Not only that, we go back and we are revetting some of the individuals and some of the programs that we may have concerns about, looking at social media, also going through those interviews that are necessary for some of our programs that the Biden administration abused and perverted under their time there as well. We know that we have many dangerous individuals that came in unvetted, and we are working every single day to find them and to make sure that we're preventing the next attack and preventing the next crime they may perpetuate against the American people.
A retired Air Force fighter pilot is confident that investigators will get to the bottom of a friendly fire incident that downed 3 U.S. fighter jets over Kuwait.
All 6 crew members of the F-15E fighters were able to safely eject from their aircraft and are reported in stable condition. According to U.S. Central Command, the 3 aircraft were mistakenly engaged by Kuwaiti air defenses amid a complex battle environment that included attacks from Iranian aircraft, ballistic missiles, and drones. Kuwaiti officials have acknowledged the incident and have launched an investigation. Derek Jones is a retired Air Force fighter pilot who now serves as executive director of the Chaplain Alliance for Religious Liberty.
Obviously, something broke down. Clearly it did. And the Kuwaitis perceived these 3 F-15Es to be a threat in the midst of other threats that they had already been encountering. So I'm not looking to give them alibi or excuse. They will get to the bottom as to why this happened.
And Jones says these are good systems.
But they only work if everybody is involved, everybody is engaged, everybody has all the information, and it's passed in a timely manner. Certainly in the midst of combat, the crew could have been given wrong codes.
I'm Chad Groening.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
3 simple words: uplift, inspire, and encourage perfectly identify American Family Studios. Since 2011, we've created documentaries, animation, films, and audio to uplift, inspire, and encourage individuals and audiences worldwide, reclaiming media from the filth Hollywood and the world push on us and our children. See what we have to offer your family when you visit AmericanFamilyStudios.net. AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. Appreciate you joining me on this Tuesday. Boy, a lot has happened since we were together on Thursday, so a lot to catch up on. We've got, of course, the Iran situation. We've got Texas independence. I mean, come on. Can't skip out on yesterday being the Texas independence, March 2nd. Got to celebrate that. So, of course, have to read William Barrett Travis's letter from the Alamo. I mean, that's just Texas tradition. And for all you non-Texans out there, you know, there's only 2 kinds of people in the world, Texans and those who want to be Texans. So today I'll let you kind of be a Texan by hearing that letter, because it was written to you as well. It's to the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots. I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot. I love this guy. This was like Donald Trump at the Alamo. Like, that's what he would have done at 26 years old, which William Barrett Travis was 26 or 27. I can never remember. Anyway, I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Then I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character to come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgets what is due to his own honor and that of his country. Victory or death. William Barrett Travis. P.S. The Lord is on our side. When the enemy appeared in sight, we had not 3 bushels of corn. We have since found in deserted houses 80 or 90 bushels and got into the walls 20 or 30 head of beef. All right, William Barrett Travis, February 24th, 1836, writes that letter. Of course, the only men to answer that letter are from my beloved Gonzales, Texas, where the first shot of Texas independence was fired. 32 of them, the immortal 32 we like to call them, fought their way into the Alamo to die. And, of course, yesterday celebrated the Day of Independence. So because Travis was holding strong at the Alamo, the founders of Texas were able to gather at Washington on the Brazos, sign the Declaration of Independence for Texas, and the rest goes down in history. Of course, the Alamo would fall a few days later, and ultimately we would win at San Jacinto. Very quick revolution, by the way, 6 months, essentially, from the first shot fired there in Gonzales, October, to us defeating them in at San Jacinto. So I share all that today because, yesterday, of course, Walker had you on the Day of Independence for Texas. But it used to be that everywhere all over Texas, people would read this letter. We'd have all these gatherings on March 2nd, and people would celebrate it. I've started sharing it with the whole country, first of all, because Travis, wrote the letter to all Americans everywhere in the world because they shared the love of freedom. Texas would only be an independent nation, for roughly 10, 12 years, and then would become part of the Union. I love the letter because it expresses so much of the Texas attitude, the American attitude, the whole idea that, hey, I'm willing to die like a man, die like a soldier who understands honor in what you do for your own reputation and your own sense of honor, but more importantly for the country. And then, of course, because he signs it victory or death, which is the exact phrase that was the password on the night that Washington made that crazy, impossible decision to cross an icy Delaware River in a snowstorm to attack the very same Hessian soldiers that had just mopped the floor with him a few weeks before in New York. But that surprise attack on Christmas night would lead to a complete turnaround for the Americans, again, also history-making. But the password there that night was victory or death as well. So love that attitude, love the history of Texas and of the United States. It's so rich. Of course, we have our sins and our black marks and all of those things as well, which is why we teach the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it. But unfortunately, our schools do not celebrate enough of the good. They only teach the bad and the ugly. So here we are the day after Texas independence, had to share. By the way, if you haven't been to the Patriot Academy campus, I want to invite you to come to Constitution City, Texas, and study the Constitution here in our legislative hall. We will build Independence Hall. We haven't been able to do that yet, but we are certainly going to do that in the next couple of years. Possibly even have it built by the end of the 250th. We'll see how the money flows and the construction and all that happens. But we do have our legislative hall built. So we built a mock-up of the Texas House so that we can do these, what we call leadership congresses, Patriot Experience leadership congresses for military veterans, pastors, young people. We do it year-round. In fact, we got one coming up for the Turning Point students. They're coming in to do one, and Charis Bible College is coming in here in just a couple of days to do one. We've had all kinds of groups come in. But the reason I'm segue over to that is because as we're talking Texas history, one of the huge paintings that we have in this big legislative hall, we have some of the ones from the Capitol. If you've ever visited the United States Capitol, there in the Rotunda, there's 8 amazing paintings in there, including the signing of the Declaration that most people recognize, the embarkation of the Pilgrims, the baptism of Pocahontas, DeSoto discovering the Mississippi, the surrender of the British at Yorktown, the resignation of Washington, when basically could have been king, decides to go home. So that picture of servant leadership, the victory at Saratoga. Anyway, there's like 8 paintings there, and we've got some of those in our big chamber. But one of the ones we have is a Texas history one, and it's when Ben Milam, who my wife is related to, she's a descendant of Milam's brother. When Ben Milam, one of the great Texas heroes, said, "Who go with old Ben to San Antonio?" It's his famous painting in Texas history, and it's got that flag of the come and take it flag, the white, the black cannon on the white backdrop says "Come and take it." King Leonidas, of course, said "Mon on lave." Well, the patriots at Gonzales said "Come and take it," and said "Mon on lave" in their own way. So that painting is there. So we try to teach these folks that come in from all over the country a little bit of Texas history, because everybody's got a little bit of that Texas spirit in them, and we like to call it out. All right, so enough of Texas Independence Day. Had to start there because I just love honoring those who came before us and reminding us of that spirit with which we gained our freedom, and frankly, that we're going to need to keep that freedom. There's a concentrated effort to remake America into something it was never intended to be. There is obviously the Marxist effort and the leftists who gained a foothold in American government through Barack Obama in 2008, or January of 2009, I should say, and had their way for 4 years under the Otto Penn administration of Joe Biden, and were able to flood the country with illegal aliens that do not share our values, that do not wish to assimilate, that are not here just to make a little money and send back home to the family. They are here to remake America, to completely change the fabric of our nation, to dilute the values and the culture that made this the greatest nation in the history of mankind. A big part of that is the Islamic invasion, and we are experiencing it in a big way in Texas. And so that's why I started with the Texas independence thing. You are watching, I'm sure I get text every day from folks in this audience and friends across the nation shocked at the things they are seeing on social media with Texas. 300, 400, mosques in the last few years. Actually, it's 2,000 when you count the home gatherings. Sort of like for those of us that are Christians and grew up in the Christian church, you've probably done home church at some point in your life. Maybe we did that a lot throughout my childhood, and it's where a church often begins, is in the living room, and shared values, and you're teaching the Bible, and you're raising people in the nurture and admonition of the Lord and other families, and having that iron sharpening iron, and usually, often develops into a larger church. And then, sometimes you look back 20 years ago, it's where some of our biggest mega churches started, were in home churches. Well, unfortunately for us, the Muslims have a similar model, and they begin in homes often with just a few gathering in the small towns. I mean, we're talking places in Texas that you would not expect an Islamic revolution. You would not expect a significant number of Muslim families to begin to dominate in these small towns and then start to take over their governments and infiltrate their schools. But it's happening right here in Texas. And so the latest number I've seen is 2,000, not 300 or 400 mosques, 2,000 mosques when you count those home gatherings, which is what they do. That's their plan. That's how they intend to take over. And they don't shy away from that. They don't even use taqiyya, where they are allowed to lie to the infidel in order to take over. They don't even use that in this particular case. They say, this is our plan. This is what we are intending to do. We need more families to move to Texas. We need more children. They are outpopulating us, and it is real. And this is not conjecture on my part. It's not some kind of, I'm just seeing more hijabs and more mosques, and therefore I'm trying to guess that this is what happened. No. This is, we're watching it happen in in London, all across the UK, all across Europe, in Australia. I mean, it's the exact same game plan. And when you listen to the people that are living that and experiencing that, they will tell you we are 5 years away, maybe less than 5 years away from where they are, which means no free speech, which means Islamophobia laws getting passed, which means women losing their rights, all the things that come with Islam. And I am amazed that we were asleep at the wheel for as long as we were. I will say the good news, as we're getting close to the end of this segment, I want to make sure we hit on some good news. The good news is that more and more people are waking up. And the boldness that I'm now seeing of people saying Islam is not compatible with Western civilization, not just saying Sharia is not compatible with Western civilization, but that Islam is not compatible with Western civilization, is heartening. The wake-up is real. Well, today in Texas, back to Texas, where this is essentially ground zero, we have an election. I guess Texas, North Carolina, Arkansas all have primaries today. In the Texas election, there is a something we do in the Republican primary. We have these ballot propositions. So after you finish voting for senator and attorney general and all those things, and you get all the way down to the bottom of the ballot, there's 10 propositions. What these are propositions that the Republican base in Texas through the primary election essentially are saying to the governor, lieutenant governor, Republican legislators, this is what we want. So there's a lot of good ones in there. There's some great ones on property tax and some other things. But the last one, number 10, is that Texas should prevent Sharia law, that we should not have Sharia law in Texas. And it's very important that this is a 75 or 80% victory on that ballot initiative. But that's going to happen today. So we'll find out tonight what those numbers are, and then, of course, be pushing that in the legislature. So that's some of the good news, is that more and more people are waking up. I'm so thankful for my friend Frank Gaffney, who you heard here on the program from the presentation that he did at our campus a couple of weeks ago, for his leadership in the Save Texas, Save America effort, and it begins with that proposition. So we'll tonight see what kind of momentum we've got coming out of that election. Of course, we're going to get to Iran. We're going to talk about whether or not this action by President Trump was constitutional. We will talk about where to go from here. We'll talk about what it means in terms of world politics. What it could mean for us as a nation, both economically and of course, our resources. Will this be a quick turnaround? I think the president has hinted at 4 weeks or less was their plan. The strike today to not only take out over the weekend some of the leadership, but the entire. I'm sorry to giggle, but it's just like, I mean, the intelligence of Mossad to be able to do this, to take out now the entire group that was going to choose the next leader. It's remarkable. They're showing the might of Israel and the United States and making people think twice for years to come whether or not they plan to attack us. So this is in any way, shape, or form, anywhere in the world. So this is going to have ramifications for years. And then, of course, the Austin terrorist attack that took place here in my home state on Sunday. So we'll come back to all these things when we come back from the break. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Love to hear your thoughts on all of these topics. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Reed.
But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah weren't the only Jewish exiles in Babylon. They weren't the only people under Nebuchadnezzar who knew that Yahweh expressly prohibited worshiping graven images. Yet they are the only three recorded in Scripture who refused to bow down and worship the golden statue. Though they were an extreme minority, they refused to get along with the Babylonian culture. The way of Christ following may be in the minority today. It is, nevertheless, the way. Resolute is the disposition of the fully persuaded. In this modern-day Babylon, be one of the three.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
The following is a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt, and it stressed me out. But what I thought was a solution turned out to be a problem. I kept hearing ads about debt settlement that seemed too good to be true. And actually, it was. When I called, they told me to stop paying my bills. That didn't sound right to me at all, so I hung up. Later, I found out that debt settlement is bad, real bad. Then I learned that there is a right way to pay off your credit cards. It's called a debt management program from the great team at Trinity. Trinity had a plan. In the end, I paid off my bills, I saved thousands, and I even improved my credit score.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Heather. Please forget debt settlement and remember Trinity Debt Management.
1-800-788-1813.
God's hand has been upon this nation from the beginning. Evidence of our spiritual heritage is obvious and inspiring if you know where to look. For many years, the Wildmon family has led spiritual heritage tours to Washington, D.C. and Colonial Williamsburg. And this year, they're adding the city of Boston. With the help of historian Stephen McDowell of the Heritage Foundation, spiritual heritage tours in June and September will reveal God's amazing blessings upon the United States. In June, Tim Wildmon leads a tour of Washington, D.C., including George Washington's Mount Vernon. He'll lead another tour to Colonial Williamsburg in September. And Wesley and Walker will lead a tour to Boston, also in September. For dates, costs, and all the details, go to the website wildmangroup.com. That's wildmangroup.com. You'll see evidence of God's touch on our nation going back 250 years. Visit wildmangroup.com for all the information and to register, and we hope to see you on a spiritual heritage tour.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. You know, some people will get on to me for being a little bit too joyful or jovial when we're, dropping bombs on people. Look, man, count it all joy when you experience various trials. I mean, how many times throughout the Bible does it talk about having joy even in the fight? I can't approach these serious, world-shaking events without a little joy, without some humor. Even when we did the Sharia event here at the campus, I had to crack some jokes in the middle of it just because we are dealing with literally tectonic shifts in what the world is going to look like, and so for me, man, I prefer to hit that with a little bit of joy of my salvation and knowing that God's in charge of this whole thing. He laughs, right? He mocks those who think they got it all figured out and they're going to turn again. Anyway, I think that's part of what we have to do. So forgive me for being maybe more joyful than you want me to be at a difficult time. And I do get very somber when I think about the increased numbers of our men and women in harm's way. We've always got hundreds of thousands of Americans that are in harm's way, from our military, from our State Department, CIA, around the world, all of those things, in addition to our law enforcement officers on the front lines all the time. So that's like a perpetual state, but it's also something that they want to be in. Like when you have a warrior mentality, when God has made your fingers to fight, he's literally fashioned you for that, then you, again, have joy in the fight. It's so weird. It's like, even yesterday, I was down at our range. We're training a new set of instructors for our constitutional defense course, and just watching our top instructors train these new instructors, and the joy that they have in teaching someone to defend themselves. And I was thinking, I forgot how. In fact, honestly, I had forgotten how much I enjoy that. So I got to do a little training and shooting, and I had just forgotten how much over the last 15 years I have enjoyed that process, and how weird it is to other people that you actually can have joy in the fight. And the reason is because you're defending what you love. You're getting to defend those you love, and you're getting to defend the values that you love. And so while I'm very somber and serious about the fact that we have and already lost some of our men and women, I love the fact that they have enough patriotism to be willing to fight and die for the country that they love, and be willing to give some of the best years of their life and serve in that capacity. So I actually have a smile on my face when I think about them doing what they were trained to do and going out there and getting to be the best in the world at it. It's just it's honestly beautiful to see. And I don't take it lightly, nor does President Trump. I think that's one of the reasons I am comfortable with what's happening right now, is because of who's calling the shots and who's in the White House, and the track record that he has given us. He's earned our trust that as the guy in the room making those decisions and having the intelligence briefings and knowing all the different pieces of the puzzle that are moving around the world, what to do. He's earned my trust for sure, that he's playing 4D chess, and that this is about way more than just Iran or even Iran's nuclear capabilities. This is even bigger, I believe, than China and Russia, which is huge. I mean, obviously, there's some pretty clear indicators that both the Venezuela and the Iran situations are designed to cut off oil supply to China and to weaken China, but it's even bigger than that. It's remaking the globe, remaking the map, not the map necessarily in terms of borders of countries, but in terms of support and in terms of decision making. I'll say the same thing I said when we arrested Maduro. There are people all over the planet shaking in their boots right now and rethinking their nefarious, evil plans to hurt us or hurt Americans around the world or hurt Israel or Taiwan or any of our allies. They are completely having to rethink their plans because of the show of strength, the peace through strength, and the ability to punish those who attack us. And in many ways, that's what this is. I understand this is, most certainly the president has made a great case for why this was necessary to prevent after the intercontinental missile was fired. We have to stop them, right? We cannot allow them to get back to their nuclear capabilities. But we also have to stop their terrorism around the world. They are the head of the snake. They are the number one funder and planner and supporter of terrorism, not just against us and Israel, but around the world. And so all of those reasons make sense. But look, there's also an element of this that is, in fact, punishment for the attacks for the last 47 years. So to the people out there that are, and some of them are my friends, that are so concerned that we're about to enter another forever war, I think you've got it backwards. I think we are ending a forever war. I think this is President Trump saying enough is enough. You guys have been at war with us for 47 years, and we have responded a little bit here and there, but we're done with playing that game. We're gonna change the whole game board, and so I'm thrilled, and I think it's the right move. And so I want to read to you real quick just a couple of lines from President Reagan, actually. So President Reagan in 1986 essentially made the same decision towards Gaddafi that President Trump has made towards Khomeini, and I do have to admit I did enjoy President Trump saying he tried to get me twice, I got him first. You got to enjoy that moment. But anyway, here's President Reagan on April 14th, 1986. Now, this is almost exactly 40 years. I mean, a month from now, it would be 40 years from the time that Reagan hit Gaddafi and gave these lines. And just as I read this, think Trump, okay? Think this situation that we're dealing with. Think what Iran has done. Think about how much President Trump tried to negotiate this. He tried peaceful methods. He tried to prevent this from it getting to this point, okay? And Reagan did the same thing. Here's what Reagan said. We Americans are slow to anger. We always seek peaceful avenues before resorting to the use of force. And we did. We tried quiet diplomacy, public condemnation, economic sanctions, and demonstrations of military force. None succeeded. Despite our repeated warnings, Gaddafi continued his reckless policy of intimidation, his relentless pursuit of terror. He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong. I warned that there should be no place on earth where terrorists can rest and train and practice their deadly skills. I meant it. I said that we would act with others if possible and alone if necessary to ensure that terrorists have no sanctuary anywhere. Tonight, we have. I love that. I think that is so succinct. It's so wisely describes the entire situation that, look, we believe in the biblical value of just war theory. We believe you do not just randomly attack. You do not just rebel without cause. You do not start the fight, but you are prepared to defend, and you are prepared to prevent someone from harming your family, yourself, your country, whatever it might be. And so this same thread of the biblical value of just war theory from the beginning of our nation, from the moment that Captain Parker said at Lexington, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have war, let it begin here. From that expression of just war theory taught by Pastor Jonas Clark in the church there at Lexington to all the people that would then stand on the Lexington Green and fight that day on April 19th, 1775. From that moment, and even before that, because we were constantly offering ways to have peace with our own government. Anyway, I don't want to get too caught up. From that moment, even throughout our nation's history, and specifically stopping right there in 1986 with Reagan's words to today and the way that President Trump has handled this, I believe we have been righteous in our cause, righteous in our act. Doesn't mean always. I get it. America has done horrible things, just like every other nation that has human beings in it. But from a relative comparison to every other nation in history, there is no comparison. There's no one that comes even close to doing the things that we have done to spare lives, to free people, to not respond until absolutely necessary. Actually, you could say Israel does come, maybe even surpass us there, because they have put up with even more in terms of attacks and threats and everything else, and been willing to restrain and only attack when absolutely necessary. But to this point about Trump and sort of this Reagan spirit of resolve, just listen to those words, man. In fact, I know this will be really weird on AFR to say this, but if there's any other Def Leppard fans out there, there's a Def Leppard song from the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. I can't help it. Yes, I listen to Stryper and Petra, but I also listen to Def Leppard and Journey. Anyway, so Def Leppard had this song where they actually play Reagan saying that. They counted on America to be passive. They counted wrong. In this particular speech, he says he counted on America because he's talking specifically about Gaddafi. But that's what's happened over the last, honestly, couple of decades, but for sure during the Biden administration. They got used to us being passive and receiving the attacks and not responding. And so if you think about Iran, you're talking about going all the way back to 1979, holding the hostages for 444 days or whatever it was, embarrassing America, humiliating our hostages, and President Carter, like Joe Biden, completely feckless, completely just, unbelievable. I remember interviewing Dick Cheney, 1994, and he was telling the story of Carter sending over fighter jets that weren't even armed. And Cheney saying, now what kind of president would do that? Like, he's attempting to show force but not willing to use force? What does that say to the world? Anyway, President Reagan, of course, does the impossible from what the left viewed and the Democrats, and gets the hostages released on the day that he's sworn in, shows strength. The whole phrase, peace through strength. When you don't show strength, eventually you become weak, and there is no peace. There will be war. That's why Dr. Jordan Peterson's so right when he describes a man that is unwilling to be violent is not a good man. You have to be willing to be violent to defend what God's put in your responsibility to be good. So how can you be good if you're willing to sit back and your family be destroyed, or your community or your nation to be destroyed? That's not good. So there is a peace through strength that is at the personal level, which is why we train people to defend themselves and defend their family. PatriotAcademy.com if you'd like to come do one of those trainings. But it's also a national principle that Reagan articulated better than anyone, and that Trump he may not articulate it quite as good as Reagan did, but his actions are possibly even better than Reagan. Now, that's hard, man. I got a kid named Reagan, okay? So for me to say that, but I think even in this case, because I have moved Trump ahead of Reagan on my list of best presidents, I think even in this case, I think he is less likely, Trump is far less likely to get caught up in a forever war like the Bushes did, or to allow for something like the Beirut killing of a couple hundred Marines. Not that Reagan allowed for that, but made the decision to pull out at that point, and the calculated decision to not keep the presence there. I just think Trump is the wild card where you don't know what the guy's going to do next, plays into all of this, and it is absolutely 100% constitutional what he's doing. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to dive a little deeper into that, because that's the number one question I get as America's Constitution coach. Everybody wants to know, is this constitutional? Isn't it Congress that gets to declare war? So we'll break that down a little bit and talk about the shared powers between the executive and the legislative branch with regard to our military power, and the steps that President Trump has taken following the War Powers Acts, some of which I think are frankly unconstitutional. I think there's some limitations on the president that does that. It definitely, I mean, you can argue it's not constitutional. You can absolutely prove it doesn't keep with precedent of what the Founding Fathers did. My friend Rod Martin has a great article on this that went out on yesterday, if you want to look him up and read the whole article. But anyway, there's, we've taught at Patriot or at Wall Builders for years on the Barbary Powers Wars, the quasi-war with France, some of those things that happened when you had Founding Fathers serving as president, where they showed that sometimes you declare war officially through Congress, but not always, and that it's perfectly fine for the president to defend our nation or to fight what seems like a war, and you could call a war, but terms mean things. And they did that. They did that with the quasi-war. They did it with other examples. And so I'll dive into it a little bit more when we come back from the break, but I just want you to just know right up front, what President Trump has done is 100% constitutional, and he's going above and beyond and complying with the War Powers Acts and his reporting to Congress. It's part of why you've heard the people say that his plan is to do this in less than 4 weeks, is because if it lasts more than 60 days, some things trigger with requirements to Congress, 90 days, other things. So anyway, we'll dive into a little bit of that. We'll take your phone calls, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Also want to talk about the Austin terrorism that happened on Sunday. So you had a Muslim terrorist that we welcomed into our country, legal citizen actually. I mean, he overstayed his visa and all that, but literally, going and shooting up a place right here in Central Texas where I am, with a Property of Allah shirt and a Koran in his car. Expect more of this, folks. I don't say that to get you to be fearful. Just saying, we got to be practical about the situation that we face and keep our head on a swivel and be vigilant. No fear. We're not giving a spirit of fear, but what? Power, love, and a sound mind. Stay with us. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Do you believe in the absolute inerrancy of God's holy word? Do you believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to radically change lives and empower us to live like Christ? At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement of people across our nation and across the world. And if you believe these are the kinds of pastors we need leading our churches in the future, we invite you to learn more about partnering with us through giving. Learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu today.
According to a recent study of hundreds of post-abortive women, 60% of women reported that they would have preferred to give birth if they had received more support from others or had more financial security. And that's where Preborn steps in. Meet Kelsey, a brave young woman who chose life after meeting her child on ultrasound.
I ended up deciding to keep my son, who is now 5 years old today. I love him to pieces. He brings absolute joy to my heart. I could not imagine life without him. Not only did they help me save his life, they saved my life.
When you support Preborn, you support a woman to make a choice that she won't have to regret for the rest of her life and give her the ultimate blessing, life. To learn more about Preborn's life-saving work, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or visit preborn.com/AFR.
The enemy wants to destroy anything of God's, especially mankind who is made in God's image.
What would it be like if every person knew that they were created in the image of God?
We're talking about people loved by the Father, people for whom Jesus died.
We have to stand on God's truth.
We hear in culture all the time, we need to find ourselves. We need to go find our identity. We are already defined. We are known before the foundations of the world.
In His Image is a life-changing film that has helped people break free from the grip of evil. It will take you through Scripture to show the truth, and its powerful testimonies will destroy Satan's attempts to pervert God's perfect design.
We now know with the genome of all of the DNA that there is no propensity towards a genetic disposition to homosexual behavior.
Watch it for the first time or again with someone who needs to see it. Get the 2-DVD set at resources.afa.net.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Wrapping up our two main topics today, and then we'll get to the phones, 888-589-8840. On the constitutionality issue, this is, of course, you're going to have people saying that he's rogue, that he's conducting war without Congress declaring it. And I've had friends over the years that felt that way even about the war on radical Islam that George Bush waged, and other instances. You go back to Vietnam, you got the resolution, but was there a declaration? I mean, this gets debated a lot in some of the circles that I'm in. My view is pretty simple. The Constitution does say in Article 1, Section 8 that the Congress has the power to, quote, declare war, but it gives no description of how. So is that a particular kind of piece of paper? Is that a particular resolution? Is it just when they appropriate money? But since that's their main power, as Hamilton said, the president has the sword and Congress has the purse. His point also being that the court has nothing. It's supposed to be the weakest of the three, for sure. But anyway, there's lots of ways that I think Congress can, quote unquote, declare war through their actions and through the things that they do. So I personally think if the president is executing the laws and he's defending the nation and he's doing his commander-in-chief thing, and there's a threat out there, and he makes a decision to go take care of it, as long as Congress continues to write the checks, they are supporting and doing what approving what the president is doing as a whole. And the founders' view was essentially that elections will take care of these things, and that if the nation disagrees or Congress really disagrees, the president's going to get reelected, or the members of Congress are not going to get reelected. That the elections will ultimately take care of it. Now, there's clearly a need for checks and balances. You don't want a president to be able to do anything and everything. So I think there are historical precedents for what Congress can do to stop a president from going too far. And again, the purse is the main way to do that. You can also shame them and pass all kinds of things. You can impeach ultimately if a president is completely out of control. But let's be practical about this. Do you really want 435 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate to somehow have to debate and come to enough of a consensus to be able to respond to an international threat that could destroy the nation in a matter of hours. No, of course not. It would not work. I mean, it would make us vulnerable to an attack with no ability to respond. So we vest in an individual the ability to respond quickly. That's where that trust the guy in the room is. And granted, I mean, it makes me very nervous when a Joe Biden is in office that can't even, comprehend what a cabinet would be briefing him on, let alone make a decision fast enough to respond. But that's the whole point of elections and why we campaign on those things and we talk about the ability and the health and the mental, ability to quickly make those decisions and make wise decisions. So the president absolutely has the ability to use our military to do preemptive strikes if necessary, like in this case where we, based on the intelligence, knew that Israel was going to do some kind of attack, knew that Iran was building back the ability to attack us even, all the way around the world. And that if Israel attacked, that Iran would respond, and that without our help, they would be able to respond stronger and do more damage. I mean, look, as Marco Rubio said, just look at what they're doing now, even with the preemptive strike that we did on Friday night or Saturday morning. So I trust the guy in the room that he's doing what's best for America. And we have done that from the very beginning of our nation. The Founding Fathers broke it down that way. The Constitution breaks it down that way. Supreme Court decisions have backed that up throughout our history. So there's really no case at all for saying that the president is violating the Constitution or that he can't do anything like this without a formal declaration of war from the Congress. I mean, there are examples in early American history with those first 5 presidents that were framers and founders and involved from the beginning. There are examples where presidents fought what we would call wars, both that were declared and some that were undeclared by Congress, at almost the same time, within a very short period of time, and Congress essentially approved and celebrated and did resolutions about both of those situations. In other words, Congress was well aware of the difference in having an official declaration of war when it made sense and not having an official declaration of war when it doesn't make sense. You don't want to have an official declaration of war against France in the quasi-war situation. You wouldn't want to have an official declaration of war today, maybe even against Iran, maybe even against some other nations that could potentially come to their aid. Certainly not against China or Russia, but you would want to be able to engage on the battlefield and deal with certain situations without escalating to that level of declaring war. Again, some of my friends disagree. They want it to be black and white. They want it to be no use of military force without Congress saying go do that specific thing. I just think that's not practical. I don't think you can do that in the real world. It's no different than the isolationist idea that we shouldn't be quote unquote getting involved in any of these situations. We have no interest. We don't care about those things. Well, that sounds nice. I mean, I would love to, frankly, just do Texas. I'd love to just stay in Texas 365 days a year and work on Texas and making Texas better. But I realize that my fellow Americans in other states also need constitutional knowledge and need good leadership that we're training and all of those things. And so we go out and serve those people because, you know what, we're citizens of the same country and we have a shared interest in the specific things the Constitution brings our states together for. Well, in the same way, I would love to just stay in the United States and America never have to spend a penny anywhere else in the world. But does that make practical sense? Can we survive without allies in the world? We would be, especially with the technology that's available now, with the drones, with the 2 million gotaways that are here in our country doing the bidding of these nations around the world, with the ability to hurt us around the world in terms of not just oil supplies, but everything else. I mean, folks, it's a small world now. It would be impossible for us to be isolationist and ignore the rest of the world. We would be attacked and destroyed in short order. And so are there better ways to deal with situations around the world? Yes. And I think, honestly, President Trump is showing how to do that. How do you get in quickly and get out? How do you use our amazing Navy SEALs and other spec ops to go in and snatch a Maduro, or go in and, frankly, take out a head of state, or go in and take out the cartels, or whatever it might be, How do you do that and let people around the world know we can get to anyone, anywhere, at any time? Don't mess with us. That's what President Trump is doing right now. He's showing the entire world full of nefarious players. You don't mess with Texas. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to say it. You don't mess with America either, all right? Don't mess with America. If you do, you will pay the price. And so anyway, I've constitutionality 100%, totally fine. And just from a wisdom perspective and what's best for America, what is an actual America first policy? Isolationism is not America first. Isolationism will destroy America. Isolationism will weaken America to the point of being vulnerable and destroyed. Now, clearly, don't go the other extreme and have, build billion-dollar bases in every country on the planet. I totally agree that we go too far with a lot of that. So again, Trump is remaking the entire plan. He's throwing out the old playbooks and he's rewriting this thing, I think, with a lot of wisdom. I'm sure he's going to make mistakes. Nobody's going to be perfect. But I am fully in support of how he is doing this and what's being done, knowing the risk, realizing it could develop into World War III. It could develop into a forever war. But I think it's much, much, much more likely that it ends the forever war we've been at with Iran for 47 years. I think it prevents and potentially ends. My friend Frank Gaffney says, Rick, we've been in World War III for a while. The Islamists have been undermining and invading and all of that, for decades and decades. So maybe that's true, and maybe it is that we potentially end that or cut it short. Anyway, I think we're on the right track. I meant to mention the Austin terrorist attack. That is, and again, as I said before the break, I don't bring that up to get you in a position of fear. I bring that up so that your head's on a swivel. You realize these people are here. There are terrorist cells all over our country. And the real question is, if we cut off the head of the snake enough, will even those terrorist cells decide that it's not in their best interest to act, and that it's not gonna go anywhere, even if they blow themselves up and take some Americans with them, or they do what this jihadi did in Austin, that it's just not going to work. It's not going to cower us. It's not going to shut down our economy. We're not going to, we're going to fight back, and we're going to deal with if we have Bondi Beach type incidences happen in America, that we're gonna. It's going to do is fuel the movement to remove the Islamists from our country, even those who say that they're peaceful. And so there's a lot of that calculation going on because of the way President Trump has changed the chessboard. All right, I got to get to some calls before we run out of time today. I'm so sorry to our callers. I just got carried away there. Let's go to Iris in Texas. Iris, let's see. I got my software shut down. I'm opening it back up. Let's see if we can get Iris in Texas, guys. Iris, we got you?
You got me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my question, I'm in total agreement with what you said. I believe it's a just war. I believe that President Trump had to do what he did, and I'm totally, I totally agree with it, and pray harder than you could believe for the entire situation. But my question is two prongs. One is, do you think that the Iranian people are ready to embrace a democratic form? Now, I don't say democracy; I say republic.
I know what you're saying, though. Yes, yeah, sure.
The two, but because of that, do you think that they are able, after being under such oppression and for so long, to be able to embrace it and be able to elect a leader that would lead them into freedom?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, Iris, you got it is a fundamental part of this whole equation. I think either way, no matter what the answer to that question is, it's still the right thing to do and had to be done. But the answer to that question that I don't think anybody knows for sure does determine how much benefit we get out of what just happened. And so, yeah, the short answer, see if I can sum this up really quickly, entirely plausible that you end up with even worse leadership. That's always the risk with these kind of tyrannical situations. I do think Iran is very different from Iraq, and I'm no Middle East expert at all, but just from my observations, very different in terms of there is a better chance that soil is still good to be tilled and seeds planted from what Iran was like prior to the Islamic regime than what you had with Afghanistan or Iraq, either one. And so I don't know if 47 years of brutal totalitarianism and controlling the education system and all of those things would be enough to stamp all of that out. I think there are signs that would not be the case in terms of the protesting, in terms of just examples of the education level. So I think there's some great indicators there. Again, not being an expert on that, and just from what little bit I have been able to read and learn. So there's a better chance of it certainly becoming a far better state and having a chance to go back to what it was like before 1979, which was not, what we would consider to be complete freedom and constitutional republics, much more of a monarch, constitutional monarch type situation that would likely take place over there and probably be more effective with that particular value system and people. So yeah, great question. I think it remains to be seen what that will look like. I do think there's a factor at play here that has been talked about a little bit is just the revival that is there underground. There is a significant conversion rate happening, a significant growth of the church, the Christian church in Iran that's been going on for several years. So there is the potential that those seeds would result in a good government as well, but it's just a potential because it's, first of all, you don't have most Christians even in America that are taught how to biblically govern and how to let those Christian values be reflected in government as well. So whether or not that's been translated over there in these conversions, in other words, have they been discipled? That's really what I'm saying. If that Christian church that's growing and exploding over there is actually being discipled well, and they take that discipleship into the government, and they actually have Christian values now start influencing their economy, the way they do government, how they treat their neighbor, then you have a much better chance. But I think it remains to be seen. Honestly, we could spend the whole hour on that question, and I don't think still know for sure how it's going to turn out. But certainly going to be far better than what they were dealing with and what they had. And of course, Mossad and CIA and other intelligence agencies are going to be involved in that behind the scenes. We're going to say we're not, but they are. And so I think the bombing today of taking out that entire group that was about to choose the next leader is a clear indication that it will not be. We will not allow another Islamic regime to take over. It will not be a Sharia law situation. It will not be as bad as it was. How much better? That's what remains to be seen. All right, folks. Sorry for everybody else on the calls. I was terrible about getting to the calls today, so I apologize. We'll get to more of those on Thursday. I really appreciate you listening, folks. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.